Hello there, and welcome back to our Orlando time-lapse series. In today's episode we will continue where we left off and start with the construction of the two buildings right beside the Emporium Building. So you probably noticed that within the last 2 weeks, or almost 3 weeks now, I didn't release any video here. And the main reason for that was just that I had another dentist appointment where I got my wisdom teeth removed. And this completely knocked me out for a couple of days. And when I recovered from that, everything was fine, but I just couldn't talk like I normally do. As of recording, today is the 9th of June and it's the first day I can talk normally again. And so within this time frame now, those 3 or almost 4 weeks, there were so much things happen. I feel like in this time-lapse series we really lag behind a little bit. In those days where I was recovered but I couldn't talk, I made enormous progress on this area. This whole area that you see on this left side here is completely finished and I'm just before starting on the other side of the main street. So in that regard I have footage here for the next 5 episodes. And the only job right now is for me to voice them. Sometimes it's not always that easy to find meaningful and interesting topics, and where I also don't repeat myself too much. With every new episode there's coming, it's the same thing. I have to think about the topic and what fits in it, and after all it's all improvised in some way. I of course have my thoughts in beforehand, but what you are hearing right now is completely up to me, so to say. And so with this little introduction out of the way, I think I move over now to the main topic of today's episode, and that is the 5th update. So Frontier released this update on the 29th of May. And so before I tell you all of my thoughts and opinions about it, just let me start by saying this. Whenever I talk about this game, I speak from the perspective of a creator that primarily builds a realistic park within it. I'm really not that bothered by any management features within this game. I never played this game like it was meant to be played. For me it's more like a building simulation. And so whatever I'm saying right now, it's kinda subjective. I can't really turn that off. And I even believe it's good that I can't turn that off. I mean, if you want a quick and objective guide on the latest update and all those features within it, well, I'm sorry to say, but you are at the wrong place. There are a lot of content creators out there that I believe do a far greater job at exactly that than I ever could. And so most certainly you are here for a different reason. And I believe you have here a specific expectation or an interest about this series. If you already watched a couple of episodes, then maybe you are excited about how it's continued. And to get back to this topic, I just think it would be invaluable if I exclude now my subjective opinion. I think that's what is part of this recreation. Why would you bother watching all of this but not be interested into the mindset of the person that is recreating it, right? And I mean, it's not only applying now to this series alone. I mean, who am I? Every person there is that covers Planet Coaster. So people like Aston Wolf or Rudy Rankamel or Mineral or even Taggy 3D. Every one of them is telling a story through their series. I mean, the subject there is completely different, but even if they don't be aware of that, all the time they are telling their own story. And that's what makes it interesting. That's what makes it relatable. If you wouldn't have there a character that tells a story alongside their video series, what's the point of watching that, right? I mean, sure, you could overlay now some background music. Maybe that's kinda relaxing in some way. But are you really that patient to watch footage without any narrative voicing at all over hours on end. I'm at least not that patient at all, and I just like the enjoyment you get when somebody is trying to tell you a story there. So in the end, subjectiveness is our friend here. Without that, it wouldn't be any fun to watch something. But having said all of those things, I think we should finally talk now about this update, right? And so when I remember back, I mean it's already 12 days ago, I'm very late to the party you could say, but I was laying in bed and had severe tooth pain, and I was so happy that they streamed one day prior to this update and they showed there all of those features that are within it. And alone from this standpoint alone, I think this update, the 5th update, was the biggest so far in terms of the usefulness of those features. I will go over them in a second, but at the very end of this live stream, they announced that within the 6th update, they will not only bring back the fantasy theme, but actually the pirate theme. I mean, how cool is that? I think nobody expected that they bring back 2 themes within one update. This will mean within the 6th update, we will have every major scenery theme from the original Planet Coaster here in the sequel. And I mean, that's just simply amazing to have access now to all those major themes from the prequel. But the thing that really makes me excited is just the fact that they from now on have to think a little bit more about what's next for them. Which road are they going to choose? Are they continuing their approach of bringing content from the prequel back into the sequel? So the studio pack or the spooky pack, and my favorite, the adventure pack. I feel like especially with this kinda lighting in this game, for any dark ride a spooky theme is pretty much essential. Or are they going a far different road than that? Maybe they are creating their very own scenery themes from the ground up. So maybe a Japanese theme or a Bavarian theme. Theoretically you can create any theme there is, but I feel like it's always a question how relevant they are in today's pop culture. For example, a Wild West theme or sci-fi theme is always much more grounded in the entertainment world, or I really hate that word, but in the history of the motion pictures than, for example, Viking movies. I mean, I have nothing against Viking movies, but it's just the thing. That's the stuff from all those classics. And there's a reason why all of them circle around those scenery themes. But no matter what scenery theme you now choose from, I just think it should be so flexible or smartly designed that you can also use it for different purposes. So all pieces that you would fit into that, I think you should just make it very simple and don't go now for ultra detailed models. I just think less is more here. And over time you can always expand this library of those pieces. So ideally I would like to see both happening. That you have at a certain point in time all assets from Planet Coaster 1 in this game, but also on the other side something completely new that was never seen before. At the end of the day, it's always a question how much time and effort you have to spend to achieve that. I would say to create now a complete, unique scenery theme that fits to the visual style of the game is far harder, and it just takes much more effort to do that than to re-import all those existing assets into this game. I kinda see that that's maybe their strategy for now, that they work on the gameplay features side of the game alongside with re-importing all those scenery themes that are already existing. And then after that's done, they fully focus on completely new scenery packs that they might even sell as a DLC. I mean, right now the trust level I think is again at an all-time high, where you could do that, but always under the premise that you also get something for your buck here. I don't want to see any ride pack again where you spend like 10 or 20 bucks just for 3 coasters or something like that. I want to see full-stretched new scenery themes here that make sense within their logic. And if that's done properly, I can see myself easily pay up 25 or 30 bucks even if the quality and the experience of that is so good. That's also the thing, that most people or the core audience of this game are adults. I don't think that we have here too many children or teenagers that decide now about the income that this game makes on the market. I mean, I see it in the demographics of each video I publish here, that most people that are watching here are between 20 and 40 years old. That's also where I would roughly guess the age of the average player of Planet Coaster. And so, as I said also in a previous episode, since we are adults here, you can't fool us. And we see that or smell that immediately if there's something off, if there's a other motive about it than the product itself. And that's why I always would recommend that we stick very transparent here and honest, and where I would easily also see when there's something off or just something not working in the end, just show it. That's free advertising, I think. It will bind the relationship between customer and developer a lot. And you know what? Let's scale that even up. Why not? When I would have to describe today's world, I would describe this century even as the century of empathy. It might seem like that's not the case when you look on the current situation in the world. But when you make the comparison to all ages before that, I think it's pretty apparent that the general community and all people within that get along much more nicely than before. Maybe not in all departments, but in the grand majority, we are much more open to each other and we are listening even to people that might have a different opinion than ourselves. And so I really have to be cautious here to not get political in any way. All those achievements of the human rights, of freedom of speech, that you can express yourself in whatever shape or form, that it doesn't make a freaking difference on which color your skin has, that every person there is, no matter how he looks, gets treated in the same way, and that you can be whoever you want to be. All those achievements and qualities, they are relatively new when you take a view on the timeline, how our civilization evolved over those ages. And this kinda shows me, as time moves onward, we as a civilization should become a lot more empathic and open to each other. And especially with the evolution of the technological era, you can show it as easy as never before. I mean, you could even say that you might had an equal amount of empathy or violence in all those previous eras, but you just couldn't see that. And I feel like this transpires when you look on social media, for example. The extremes of on one side empathy and on the other side violence or hatred, they not actually got bigger by itself, they only appear of getting bigger because they are much more visible. But overall I would always say that the empathy or the good side there wins the race in the end. And therefore I believe when you show there's some empathy in today's world, most certainly you have there people on the other side that are liking what you are saying, and there's a little bit of empathy also coming back. And last but not least, maybe you can make the world there even a tiny bit better in the end. But coming back now to the topic, I mean, we are drifting here pretty strongly around the topic, but that's just the thing I mean. When you show there a little bit of openness and count of the empathy of other people, then most certainly they will understand those things and you will benefit from that. And even as a developer of a game, I think this is applying to some sort. And that's why I say if you have there some openness into the development process of this game, you can only benefit from that. And even if there is something you just can't manage to develop, when you explain that properly and show it to us, we will understand that and we can say, okay, we have here a company that takes their customers serious. And therefore my trust and loyalty level is so high, I would defend it in any case. And therefore even if there is something bad happening or you just can't make anything, just tell us. That's always the best solution, I think. But having said all of those things here, in my opinion, Frontier does the right thing and they keep going and they keep developing, and that can only be positive here. And so maybe at this point, let's talk finally about the 5th update and its features. So for me, the biggest feature there is, it's not even listed as a feature in the update log, but it's the ability that you can not only activate or deactivate lights and lamps in your park, you can also set them to night only mode and change the color on them with a display sequencer. And this opens up a complete universe how you can create dark rides. And I mean not only dark rides, pretty much everything that you see that is on nighttime in this game. I mean before this update, every light that I had in my park, when I went to night mode, everything was overexposured like crazy. And therefore my solution for that was to lower down the color to a much darker color. But this had the side effect that on daylight, the light itself has a much darker color that is completely different to the one that you see at nighttime. And so there already in episode 4 or 5, I encountered this problem. And so if you would want there some night lighting that would be realistic and not too overexposured, then you would have to live with the wrong color all the time on daylight. And that's of course when you build 99% in this park on daylight. That's just not great, right? So right now in the park I made it like that every lamp that you see visually, it's deactivated. And I have on a separate scenery group there some event lights that I hid within all those lanterns. And in that way you can control each lamp by itself to give it the right intensity, and you can control them all with one scenery group. And theoretically also with our own display sequencer. Or that they go on specific intervals so that they mimic like some light switch is going on and not every light is perfectly synced to each other. So something like I did on Space Mountain. But again, this small fix or change, it has such a huge consequence on pretty much anything we will create later on. Just think about fireworks and parades, and every dark ride there is will be affected by that. This thing alone deserved its own update, I think. But nevertheless, I'm just very happy that it's in the game now, and we can from now on talk also about the illumination of this park. So the next feature that is of course very closely followed by that would be those path changes and features where you can now finally make the path invisible. And when they showed this feature within the stream itself, I mean, it was a little bit funny to me. They not only nailed it here, I think they overshot beyond everyone's expectation regarding this requested feature. I mean, you not only can now make the path invisible, you can also have there many different variations of what's activated and what's not. So you can have just a plain path texture by itself without any curb at all, or you can have the curb with the texture but without any base foundation. And that's, I mean, just great from a creative perspective that you can choose there specifically on what you need in all those different situations. Those things are the exact things I like to see from this developer. Smart solutions and where you really think ahead. What could be useful for all kinds of players. I probably said already that there are many different types of players. There are people that play this game a lot more casually than I do, and for them I could imagine it's just great to go to the path menu and to turn on all those settings to quickly build a path. They don't want to be bothered by handpicking their certain little settings and really bother about now how this path looks at the end. They just want that it functions within this game. And that's what I mean, that you have there just so many options that every person that is playing now the game finds useful for their own playing style. And so therefore also the next feature I will talk about now, it makes perfect sense within this logic. I talk about those recolourable class elements. And the best part about this, you can even set the opacity of the class. The only downer to that was that every window I had in the park, it got set a specific opacity value, and therefore every window looked like very whitish. But that's really no fault from the developer. I mean, you have to give a certain value now to those windows, right? So far in the park I made of course use of those recolourable class sheets, and previous I had there just those windows and in the back those cloud elements that you could recolor, and therefore you could at nighttime have there like a little animated ambient lighting that emulates the interior of this building. And now with those recolourable windows you can mix there the color between this cloud and the window itself. Especially the opacity slider comes here very useful, since you can make the window on daytime a little bit more brighter than at nighttime. And the color you set in the cloud behind it, it gets also affected by that a little bit. And of course I completely forgot now, those class sheets are also now available in different forms and shapes. Especially those round ones, I feel like they are very useful in all those situations where you have to create a window of some sort and where you might not have so many space around it to hide the sheet behind a wall or something like that. But for me those three great features, so that you can activate and deactivate lights, that you have those path options to finally make the path invisible, and to have more freedom in creating class sheets. Those three things by itself are so essential and versatile whenever you are creating something in this game. And especially when you are doing now something where you work on nighttime and you want to illuminate something. How are you going to do that without the ability of turning on and off those lights, especially for parade vehicles? So something like a parade would be possible now, I think. Although I have to say here that we really need another type of light where you have those bulbs. I mean, on every main street facade you see them on those trim areas where you have like those strips, and all the time you have there like those bulbs sticking out. And so something like this is currently not possible. I know you have also here some strips with some bulbs on it, but they are hanging down in the middle of it. And that's of course very inconvenient when you have 95% of all those buildings have linear facades. I don't know if Frontier is listening or not, but if you do, please guys, add another variation of those light strips with a flat variation. I can remember in Plan Coaster 1 when I did the Anaheim project, we had there also some strips that were flat, but they were truly 2D, so you didn't have there a physical 3D model by itself, so you had just like a little 2D sprite there. And those lights were even recolorable and even animated so that they would switch the color like within 1 second. And with that, I completely cluttered up the whole main street by itself. I think I used 5,000 or something like that, I can't remember, but we probably exceed that if we get some flat light strips here. And so something I missed out on this update is also we have now Recolourable Rocks in this game. So far I barely used any foliage in this park. I mean, you saw me earlier make that work right beside the railroad station a little bit. But when we get to those more open areas later on, so I talk about Big Thunder Mountain or like the landscaping around the main hub, then we can surely make use out of that. Especially for Big Thunder Mountain, I couldn't imagine a more useful feature, where you of course have those very distinct golden colors of this Wild West theme. I mean, back in Planet Coaster 1 when I did the Big Thunder Mountain there, it was a little bit cheesy, I would say, because when creating a map or a park within the prequel, you had to select certain terrain textures in before even loading into the park. I'm not entirely sure how it will work here. I think we already have all of those important textures within our landscaping tool, but trying to make the point, back in the prequel, for every terrain texture there, we had a reddish or brownish rock texture as well, so they would fit to either one of them. What that meant, of course, you were bound to the specific texture you wanted to use. You had the same selection of rocks there, but just in different textures. And that's of course something I very much like now, that we are no longer forced of using those set textures. If you want to make your rock a little bit more brighter, you can do that now. And that's also what boosts the realism tremendously. Because when you look in reality and you see like a little mountain or something, and you see there's some rocks, every rock has a different color. There's no rock that has the same color. It might seem from very far away that it has the same color, but it will just blend at a certain point or at a certain distance. And that's the thing I like. You can then later go in and select there randomly some rocks, and you can adjust the color very slightly there. And this will immediately make everything look much more realistic. I kinda wished I had this feature within Planet Coaster 1. When I remember back to Matterhorn, this whole mountain I completely built out of individual rocks by itself. And so of course every rock has the same texture, and when you look on it very closely, you of course see certain rocks repeat themselves. I mean, I made sure that it's really not that apparent, but you just can't avoid that. But now I can very well see that you can create such an illusion with this God-given power from Frontier, that you can recolor them. And again, all those features I listed now, I mean, they sound so simple by themselves, but that's also why they work so great, I think. I mean, you have glass, you have rocks, you have lights, and you have paths. You need those things when creating a theme park. And when you have a multitude of variations, of creative variations, how to use them, it will enhance the whole experience for every player there is, no matter what kind of player you are. And that's the true magic, what makes this update stand out, I think. All those previous updates, they were of course very great, and all of them had their specific benefits. But this one is really something where I believe Frontier goes beyond their expectations. I mean, and beforehand it was clear that they at a certain point in time make the path invisible. There were a whole army of people on Reddit that voted for that. At the very top of that was of course Teggy3D, who made them, at least in my opinion, finally aware that we just need those paths now, those invisible paths. But they not only listened now, they gone even a step beyond that by adding all of those extra functionality where almost nobody asked for. I myself asked for that they would please remove the path foundation, but it didn't came into my mind to make now every feature of this path fully customizable. But that's just so amazing because it shows that they really are within this game. They go now for this extra step, which you have to take in order to make this game a true experience for all players. There's some dedication that you can feel just by those minute additions to the game. And therefore, I think you can say that this update not only changes now things within its game, but it changes the paradigm of their development. I think we are here at a crossing point where this game leaves its, let's say, damage-controlled update logic and starts to become its own game by itself. It can finally stand on its own legs. It does not have to be always being afraid of getting compared to its predecessor and to be ranked alongside that. I feel that's really sometimes the problem with sequels. I mean, with most movie series, you have that also happening, that most of the time, in 95% of the time, the first one is always the best, just because it created its own saga. But to get back to Planet Coaster, I feel like that from now on, every update that is upcoming, it's not anymore about those damage-controlled additions. We almost have everything we wanted, except maybe the adventure pack Frontier, come on. But with every update that is coming now, it feels more that the game sets its own course. It creates its own journey, and that's one thing I missed until this point. And that's so great that we finally reached this point. And from now on, it only can get so much better, I think. And so after all that long and tedious talk, I'm excuse myself here, I hope I gave a decent enough coverage now about this update and its consequences for the future. And so let's look, I completely didn't focus today on what we are actually building right now, but the creation of those two buildings here, it was very interesting to see how to approach them in some way. The thing that makes them so interesting, I believe, is just the fact that you have here two complete different materials. On the right side, everything is plastered, and on the left side, you have almost only brickwork there. And the challenge for me was how to create them now also with some interior in mind. I mean, in the last episode, I talked about how we might deal with the interior space of it. And until that's done, I mean, I need a solution here until we have the interior intact here. And therefore, those cloud elements come in that you simulate there the interior for that. But that's the thing, you have to build the window in 3D space. I really dislike it sometimes when you are creating a building and you just plop down a pre-made window just on the facade of it, just like that, boom. And although it might be very fast and quick and dirty, it just doesn't look any good, I think. At least if you have the standard of creating now a realistic park. If you are doing a fantasy park, I mean, I don't care at all. But again, if you are trying to make now a very realistic park, those profiles of those windows, and that you get there a 3D space and depth in it, that's what makes the difference in the end. When you would see this facade with customly designed windows and just those pre-made ones, I would bet $100 that those customly designed windows will always look way better since they push this building out. You get this contrast happening. I would say very abstractly, the building starts to breathe in some way. It's not only a 2D surface and you just plop down an additive window on top of it, that's just not how windows work. They are portals or openings into the building. They serve like a barrier between outdoor and indoor. And so therefore, whenever I see a realistic build, that's the first thing where my eyes go, that they are built within 3D space. I mean, back in Planet Coaster 1, this was a huge issue, just because you couldn't scale anything up or down, and therefore you had to work with those pre-made ones. And I really hated that in retrospect, and all the time I look now onto the build, it really annoys me in some way. But that's just the thing and the technology level of this game. And it could very well be that in the very far future, when we are playing Planet Coaster 3, I might say the same thing about this game here. Who knows what the future will bring us? We have again the beauty of unpredictativeness. Before starting on this building, for example, with those brickwork, I really was not that confident when creating those windows in 3D space. And earlier you saw how I created that. And it was really a struggle and a pain to find there some solution, especially to create now like those little nuts in between those curved brickwork. I mean, that's completely, I don't know what made me use now those pieces for that. But at a certain point in time, you just figure out a solution to that. And that's the thing I'm trying to get around here. That if you try hard enough in the end, and you are kinda dedicated enough of trying that, then you will make it in the end. It's just a game between time, patience, and motivation. If I only could give you one advice here, I would say just keep on doing it. Don't stop. Just keep on doing it. Having said all of those things, I think we come now to the end of this video. We made a great progress today with those two buildings, and I know I talked not that much about those two buildings. I will do in the next episode, where we will tackle the left side of this building, especially with this little tower on the left side, which was quite tricky to create, holy moly. I mean, you will see it for yourself in the next episode. Sorry for telling you that. But with that being said, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, subscribe, like or comment, become a member of this channel, join our Discord server, watch my other videos about Anaheim or Orlando, and thank you for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.